Welcome to a series of talks on All Feelings Are Good and Right, a guide to intelligent living. I'd like to introduce you to two students who are part of the workshop. Both of my friends here are therapists as well, and they're joining us today. Perhaps they'll have some interesting comments or questions as we go along. And so why don't you introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Raman.
Hey, I'm Josh.
And you know me as Dr. B. So here we go. We'll start with kind of a preview of where we're going to be going over the next few hours total. Each of these segments will perhaps be around a half an hour, so that we'll have a chance to focus on particular ideas for each of these chapters that will be coming up. The first chapter is on the distinction between feelings and emotions, a very, very important distinction to be made. It has a lot to do with how we live our lives in relationship to ourselves as well as to others. Feelings, emotions, feelings are the interior private experience, emotions the exterior public experience, and we'll go into why that distinction is so important. Chapter 2 is titled Conclusive versus Process Thinking. And conclusive thinking is connected with states of anxiety and depression, and also can lead to states of anger and hostility. Process thinking would address the content of conclusive thinking and open it up in a problem-solving or resolution way. Chapter 3 would be titled Desires, Wants, and Have-Tos. This has to do with realizing that you are your own authority in life, that no one else on the planet is your authority. The basic idea is that we don't choose desires, they happen innocent to us, but we can choose what to do with them, and that's what we call a want. And the fundamental idea here is that we are always doing what we want to do, and we're never ever doing anything we don't want to do, and there are no have-tos in life. Chapter 4 is about time and how we become prisoners of time. There is no time in the universe. There is no time in the material world. Time is a construct or a concept, and it is purely mental, but it has utility. So we're not saying that psychological time is a problem, but we need to understand the distinction between what we call chronological time and psychological time. Chapter 5 has to do with how we make decisions, and there are two basic paradigms: pleasure versus pain, and order versus disorder. And we'll see how decision-making leads to a sense of order and harmony in life, or disorder and disharmony. And finally, chapter 6, the consciousness exercise. It's a guided meditation that helps us to be aware of the idea, I would say the fact, that we are not the thoughts and the feelings and sensations of the body, but we are the consciousness that is aware of thoughts, feelings, and sensations in the body. Chapter 7 is not written yet. We may go into it, we may not, but this is to address the concerns of my psychoanalytic friends and how we also have to deal with the figures of the unconscious. So I guess we can fasten our seatbelts and
Yes.
get going.
Yes, we're ready
Let's
to go.
do it.
All right. So I'm going to be talking here with Raman and Josh and taking them through these basic concepts. And perhaps they'll have questions or comments of their own that they'd like to make, and we'd certainly like to hear that.
Absolutely.
Right. So we want to talk about feelings and emotions first. And what do we mean by feelings? What would you think of as a feeling? Let's pick a feeling or two. And
Sadness.
sadness, okay. Sadness is one of the major feelings. There are different systems of categorizing feelings. Basically, there are 8 fundamental feelings that most people agree on. There are some variations. So it's like happy, sad, frightened, angry, disgust, shame, surprise, love. Other people throw in trust. Some throw in curiosity. Okay, but I think the important thing here is that there's a finite number of basic feeling categories,
Mm.
and then we have variations on a theme. So, for example, with anger, we could have miffed, irritated, frustrated, enraged,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we can find many, many words under these categories. I would define a feeling here a little bit with tongue in cheek
Mm.
as activation of muscles or nerves through ideation or thought.
Right.
So basically, we would say a feeling is a muscle contraction.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now, why would we
Mhm.
define it that way? Well, I define it that way to help us see that we don't need to be afraid of our feelings. Should we be afraid of our muscle contractions? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
So why should we be afraid of feelings? Because we don't understand feelings and their function.
Mm-hmm.
And what we don't understand, we tend to fear.
Mm.
So I'd like to go into a discussion of feelings and their functions. And to really understand that with clarity, you have to be aware of the difference between a feeling and an emotion.
Mm.
So today, the plan is to talk about feelings. The next segment, we'll go into emotions.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Perfect.
Yes,
Yeah.
excited.
So here we go. We're going to make 4 points about feelings today.
Mm.
The first point is that the feeling is the interior private experience.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows what we're feeling. We don't know what anybody else is feeling unless it's communicated in some way,
Mm.
either through word or action, behavior. Okay? So the feeling is the interior private experience. So take a moment to look at that and say, does this make sense just intuitively or from your own
Mm.
experience? That feelings are happening on the inside.
Yes.
Absolutely. You know, and I know for me this rings true because I've you know, some of the feedback I've gotten in the past from friends or work colleagues is that I'm very hard to read. So they may view my outward expression as flat or blunted, but I know for me inside there's often a different thing going on. So,
Right,
so that really tracks for me. And I think in the past I'm like, of course, like you can't feel that. I feel it. It's like
Yeah.
it's inside,
Yeah,
right?
it's inside, right, yeah.
But
So
they can't read my
they can't read the feeling,
Interior
but
experience.
what they're reading is the emotion.
exactly.
So I guess right here we'll make that distinction.
Mm.
Yes.
That the word emotion comes from the Latin word emovere. E means away from,
Mm.
movere means to move.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So an emotion is a feeling that's moved away from the interior private space to the exterior public.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in our everyday language, you know, we use these as synonyms. And people will
Mhm.
talk about emotions all the time. I'm watching television, I'm watching it talk, and people are talking about the emotions. I'm going, oh, no, those are feelings, those aren't emotions.
Right. Right.
And it's such a critical, important difference. And we'll get into that as we go along. Okay, so the second point would be that we don't choose feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Feelings happen in us and to us.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So I'm just going to ask if that fits your own experience or intuitively sounds like it might be accurate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think if I could choose my own feelings, I would probably be full of light and love and joy.
Exactly.
I think every moment of the day.
That's the point, right?
Yeah.
And if people could choose their feelings, we wouldn't have the practice of therapy, would we?
Right.
So people would just say, gee, you know, I've been depressed for 2 weeks now, and that's a little too long, so I think I'm going to be happy now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We don't do that. Or we don't wake up in the morning saying, gee, you know, I think I'll make this a kind of a tragic day, but then I'll feel the relief of that tomorrow, and I'll be excited.
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds a little bit absurd, but that's what we do when we go to the movie theater, right?
Right.
We go there often to get upset so that we can get relieved,
Right.
Yes.
Right.
right? And, you know, we have these dramas and thrillers and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. So we don't choose feelings; they happen in us. They
Mm.
happen to us. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we can't choose what to do with the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a little different. We can choose what to do with those feelings. The third point we want to make is that the origin of a feeling is a thought or a series of thoughts, and they're not necessarily in their full consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's three parts to that sentence. The origin of feeling is a thought, could be a single thought, or a series of thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not necessarily in their full consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll go into a little demonstration of that in a moment. We don't choose most of our thoughts either.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
To many people that might sound surprising, but most of our thinking is actually automatic.
Right.
So we don't choose feelings, we don't choose thoughts. Okay? And I'd like to go into a little demonstration about we don't choose most of our thoughts, that our brain is thinking automatically.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So I'm thinking of a 4-letter word, and that's going to be in both of your brains. In fact, it's going to be in everybody's brain. I would say everybody. There might be an unusual person here or there that doesn't have this word or thought. And I'm choosing one that's going to be there too. Nobody else is choosing this.
Mm-hmm.
That's how automatic our thinking is.
Mm.
So in 10 seconds, everybody that's listening,
Mm.
I would say the high degree of likelihood, everybody that's listening is going to have this 4-letter word in their brain.
Mm.
It's going to be there in about 5 seconds. This thing that we read here is called a
Book.
book. There's the 4-letter word. Now, did you choose the word, or did I choose the word that your brain was going to have in it?
You chose it.
Yeah, you chose it.
Yeah, I chose it, right? And of course, you could do this with me. I mean, we're just saying that the human brain is so
Right.
highly conditioned, socially conditioned,
Mm-hmm.
that we think that we're the thinker, but really, we're not the thinker. The brain is thinking automatically.
Right.
But I want to really make sure this is very clear. So let's try another one.
Mm.
This is going to be a 5-letter word, and it's going to be there in about 10 seconds. And this time I'd like you to try to block it. Do not let the brain think this word. Block it so it can't. Okay? The color of most leaves and grass is,
Green.
yeah. Could you block it?
No.
No.
Yeah. The like blocking itself reinforces the word even more.
Right.
Yeah, you have to recognize what it is in order to block it,
Right. Right.
that there's something
Right.
there.
Right.
Well, now this could be despairing to some people, thinking, oh my God, it's so automatic, you know, what am I, nothing but a computer, the hardware, and it's all been software programmed into this brain. Well, no, we have a consciousness that can observe, witness, watch, and also participate in deciding. So that's what we're going to do now, in this third go-round.
Mm.
So there's going to be a 3-letter word in your brains, including mine, and everybody's here, 3-letter word. Try to block it. You will not be able to block it.
Mhm.
But say anything you want to say other than the word the brain is producing automatically.
Mm.
It doesn't even have to make sense.
Mm.
You could even babble or sing if you want. Okay? So here it is. Try to block it, but say anything out loud other than this word. The color of most fire engines and Santa Claus's suit is
Pancakes.
pancakes. Exactly.
Yeah. Love.
Love. Right. What did I have? Bananas fly high.
Yeah.
The point being that just because the brain thinks automatically does not mean that we have to unconsciously automatically go with it.
Mm.
Right.
We have a capacity to observe, to witness, to assess, to determine, is this true or not? Is this valuable or not? Does it have meaning or not?
Mm.
Right?
Right.
So we can also use thought more objectively, not so programmed and automatic, to step back, reflect, and assess and decide.
Mm.
So we want to make sure that that's clear.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, some like element of things we can control is like coming into the picture a little bit.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yes.
Right.
In order to control it, though, we have to be aware of how automatic it is. If we don't realize how automatic it is, there's no reason to control anything.
Right.
Okay. So I would imagine that both of you and most of us here would be thinking, well, still, I'm the thinker.
Mm.
So we're going to do a little demo here that says, well, wait a minute. Maybe the brain is thinking you.
Mm.
Mm.
Okay. So if you wouldn't mind going along with this demonstration. And please do this as
Yes.
you're watching.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. So you're agreeing to go with the demonstration?
Full consent.
All right. Raise one of your hands. Put it down whenever you'd like.
Mhm.
There were 3 choice points.
Mhm.
First one was to agree to do the demo. The second was to choose which arm to raise the hand.
Mm.
And the third was when to put it down, right? And you say that you were totally in charge and in control of that.
I would like to believe so.
It was your decision, right,
Yeah.
to participate and then
Yeah.
which arm to use and when to put it down. So if you think you're the one who's thinking, shut the brain off for the next 10 seconds. Don't let it have a thought.
Very hard to do.
Yeah,
Multiple thoughts.
Can it be done?
haven't had a lot of success with that.
Yeah.
I've had some people say, well, I shut it off. I said, well, how do you know you shut it off? They said, well, I'm just aware I shut it off. I said, well, your awareness is the thought.
Right.
It's just another thought. It's a different content.
Right.
So the brain is thinking us.
Mhm.
So if I meet you at a party and I say, oh, who are you? What would you say?
I'd probably give you my name.
Okay,
Yeah.
say Josh
Same.
or Robin.
Name.
And then I'd be kind of a smart aleck and say, well, how do you know that's who you are?
That's the name I was given at birth.
Maybe you were given at birth,
Yeah.
right? And so you were given that name,
Mm.
and it was used often enough with something pleasant or unpleasant that you eventually came to say, gee, this has to do with me,
Right.
Right.
right? My experience. Now, the brain is remembering all of that experience and the connections between the name and the pleasure and pain that comes with it. So basically, you are the memory of the brain when you identify yourself by name.
Right.
Mhm.
So what we're pointing out here is how automatic the thinking is.
Right.
Okay? Because if we don't understand that, we're not going to realize the freedom that we have to make choices and make decisions based on what we truly believe is in our best interest.
Mm.
What's next? Automatic thinking is a good thing.
Mm.
Did you ever learn to drive a stick shift?
I tried. I learned it for a little bit.
Okay. It's a little bit harder than automatic, but
Yeah.
this applies to driving automatic as well.
Yeah.
So when you first learned to drive, you had to think a lot, like where do you put the key, how long do you hold the
Right.
key, where's the gear shift, how do you move it,
Mm.
how much gas you get, how hard do you hit the brake, when you're turning, do you let the wheel go, do you hold, how do you look through the mirrors and so on. So a lot of thinking went into it. But nowadays, when you're driving, you're probably not at all thinking about how to drive. It's automatic and it's efficient.
Right.
Mhm.
You're probably thinking about something you did or what you're going to do,
Right.
or you're talking
Right.
to somebody. And so the thinking is automatic and efficient. It's the same thing with moving the body. You don't have to think which muscles do you tighten, which ones do you loosen, what do you move
Mhm.
first, how do you balance. All of it's automatic and that's a good
Right.
thing. And it's also not a good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So when is it not a good thing?
Mm.
If the origin of a feeling is a thought or a series of thoughts, not necessarily in their full consciousness, and the brain is operating automatically,
Mm.
a thought doesn't have to be factual, true, or real to produce a feeling. It just has to be attached to as if it's factual, true,
Mm.
and real.
Right.
Okay? And we see a lot of this going on today through our media,
Yeah.
taking a look at things that are happening in the world, especially around political events and so on. So we're going to do a little demo here of the fact that the thought doesn't have to be factual, true, or real in order to produce a feeling.
Mm.
Mhm.
All right?
Let's do it.
So
Yeah.
here we are.
Powerful.
We're sitting here.
Yes.
Somebody comes pounding on the door screaming, fire, fire, get out, get out. What feeling might you have?
Worry, panic.
Worry, panic,
Mm-hmm.
I could have like fear,
Fear.
anger potentially.
fear, maybe anger.
Um,
But fear,
confusion.
confusion could be that.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we go to the door, racing to get out, and the person out there open the door, and the person says, "Just kidding."
Right.
Now, what feeling do you have?
Confusion.
Confusion.
Yeah. Maybe frustration and anger
Could be frustration and anger as well.
to being,
Sure.
you know, being lied to.
Mhm. Okay, so that would become part
The
of that
story.
anger, frustration would be coming from the idea, the thought that you're being lied to.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Could be relief.
Could be relief.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
And what would be the thought behind the feeling of relief?
I'm no longer in danger. Everybody's like safe.
Okay,
You know,
yeah, so a shift in the thinking now.
Yeah, shift in the
Right.
thinking. Yeah.
Okay, so the point being this, that there did not have to be a fire
Mhm.
in order for there to have the fear or the worry or the anxiety take place.
Right.
It was simply the idea of fire.
Right.
See, this is why we're saying that it's the thought that
Exactly.
produces the feeling.
Mm.
Oh, for sure.
And then you have two different, when you open the door and the person just says, "Just kidding."
Mm.
Now let's take two different feelings. So you have frustration and maybe a little bit of anger feeling.
Mm.
And where's that coming from?
From a story that, you know, you feel like you've been lied to,
Okay,
or, you know, yeah, just feeling like you're freaking out for no reason and all the cortisol in your body
Okay.
is just going up. And,
yes. So lied to, which created that activation in the nervous system.
Right.
And the anger too, we'll say just in general, anger has a function of self-protection.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So a thought behind the anger might be something like this: "I'm going to show you that if you ever try this again, you could be in big trouble."
Mm.
Right? So that would be another thought behind the anger.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is relief.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, relief comes from the idea that, whew, okay, I'm safe.
Yeah.
It's okay. I don't have to be concerned here. And so you might even have the thought, "Oh, he lied. Oh,
Right.
thank God he lied.
Right.
You know, I'm safe."
Mm-hmm.
Whew, what a relief. So we can see the different sets of thoughts lead to a different feeling.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we say the origin of a feeling is a thought or a series of thoughts, not necessarily in full consciousness.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a little bit later, probably at the end of today, we're going to go into a demonstration of that using my friend, the snake over here, Sally Snake. Okay. Before we go there,
Mm.
I want to point out that it's feelings that give us our experience in life.
Mm-hmm.
If there isn't a feeling, it's not an experience. It's simply a fact. It's an occurrence.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, how could we show that feelings are needed for experience? Well, let's say you come in today and you say, "Gee, you know, it took us 20 minutes to get here," and I say, "Oh, 20 minutes to get here,"
Mm-hmm.
and then we don't have any conversation, and I'm just thinking, "Well, gee, what does that mean?"
Right.
It's a fact that took you 20 minutes to get here.
Right.
Then I say, "Well, that was significant for you in some way?" And he
Mm.
said, "Yeah, it usually takes us only 10,
Mm.
but this fellow in front of us was so slow."
Right.
And then I say, "Well, how do you feel about that?" You say, "Oh, I was so angry about that. You know, it's
Right.
taking me a little while to calm down." So, "Well, that was a rather unpleasant experience you had,"
Right.
Mm-hmm.
right? So it had the feeling in it that made it an experience.
Mm.
Or you might have said 20 minutes, it usually takes us 30, but traffic was wide open and we just kind of
Right.
flew through. I said, "Well, how do you feel about that?" "Well, great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wish it was like that all the time." I said, "Well, that was a good experience," right? So experience has to have a feeling attached to it. Otherwise, it's simply
Mm.
an occurrence of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
It's a historical event even.
Right.
It's not an experience. Like I have the experience of the Vietnam War era,
Right. Right.
okay, and I have some feelings about that.
Mm.
And I don't know what your thoughts or feelings are about the Vietnam War era. You may or may not have anything, but it wouldn't be coming out of experience,
Right.
not that experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to have an experience behind it.
Yeah.
Okay, No word, statement, event,
Mm.
situation, or person ever creates a feeling in us.
Yes.
Right.
This is critical to understand. No word, statement, event, situation, or person ever creates a feeling in us.
Mm.
There's 3 elements to that. No word or statement, the first element, that's the verbal.
Mm-hmm.
No event or situation, that's the objective, that's
Mm.
observable. Or person, and we give person their own category because most of our feelings come from our interpersonal interactions.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So no word, statement, event, situation, or person ever creates a feeling in us.
Right.
How could we say that? Well, the origin of a feeling is a thought or a series of thoughts, not necessarily in our full consciousness.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So when you understand that, it's the interpretations we give to those words, statements, events, situations, or people's activity.
Mm.
It's the interpretation, in fact, not we, but the brain gives to it. See, that's why it's important to understand the automatic thinking that takes place,
Mm.
right? Because remember, the thought does not have to be factual, true, or real to produce a feeling. So if we are misinterpreting things, we could easily end up with feelings that are not going to be in anybody's best interest,
Mm.
Right.
right? So the world is not giving us our experience in life. The events in life aren't giving us our experience of life. It's the interpretations of the brain creating the feelings that are giving us the experience of life.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Does this make sense here?
Absolutely.
Okay. This is where I borrow from Byron Katie,
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
from her book Loving What Is. I love the way she puts it. All disturbing feelings
Mm.
tell us we're attaching to a thought, I would say sentence in the brain or story in the mind, that's at odds with reality in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Denial's happening, things are being distorted, fantasies taken to be a fact.
Mm.
That's what all worry is,
Right.
right? Or I don't know if I mentioned denial, distortion,
Mm-hmm.
taking a fragment to be the whole. That's the
Mm.
4th one.
Mm-hmm.
16-year-old goes to her mother, Mommy, I've got a pimple, I'm ugly, I can't go to the prom.
Mm.
Honey, you got a pimple, you're still beautiful, girl.
Mm.
So all disturbing feelings tell us we're attaching to a thought, sentence in the brain, a story in the mind that's at odds with reality.
Right.
And the work is, and again, this is using it from Byron Katie, the work is to align thought with fact, reality, truth. And when we do that, then we move in the direction of being calm, peaceful,
Right.
or at least neutral.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, I like to use this analogy to make it real clear.
Mm.
The oil light goes on the dashboard of the car, or the check engine light goes on, or the little amber light goes on when the gas gauge goes down to empty.
Mhm.
The light is not the problem,
Mm.
it's the signal. The problem's in the engine or the gas tank, depending on the example. And the problem would be, let's take the oil light. So let's say the oil light goes on.
Mm.
It's not the problem. It says go into your engine, check your oil level. You check the oil level down by 2 quarts. What do? You or somebody else puts 2 quarts of oil in. What happens to the oil light? It goes out.
Mm.
The oil light's not the problem, it's the signal. The problem is in the engine, it's the oil level.
Mm.
You adjust the oil level, function of the oil light is done, it goes out.
Mm-hmm.
So the oil light is the feeling.
Right.
Whatever the feeling is, whatever the disturbing feeling is. You know, maybe I'm angry, maybe I'm hurt or sad or scared. That's not the problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's the signal.
Mm.
Okay? So the problem for the oil is in the engine. The problem with the feeling is something in the brain. Well, what's in the brain? What's the problem?
The thoughts.
It's the thoughts,
Yeah.
right? So the oil change, the oil adjustment, which puts the oil light out, would
Mm.
be, the parallel here is the thought adjustment,
Mm-hmm.
brings the feeling under control,
Yeah.
or diminishes or dissipates, right? So that feeling there is an alerting signal that says, hey person,
Mm-hmm.
take a look at the story in your brain that's producing these feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Just like if you go to the movie theater, you watch television, there's a story going on.
Mm.
None of it's true or real. It's all acted out, scripted, but look at all these feelings we get.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like, because we're taking it as if it's true or real.
Right.
Now, I'm going to say, for now, let's take it as a hypothesis
Mm.
that the disturbing feelings signal that we're attaching to a thought, sentence in the brain, storing in the mind that needs adjusting or editing.
Mm.
When we get to the chapter on time, chapter 4, I actually have a proof for that.
Mm.
We'll take it to be a fact.
Mhm.
But for now, we'll take it as a hypothesis.
Mm.
Okay? So one last thing for today is I would like to do a demonstration
Mhm.
of the fact that no word, statement, event, situation, or person ever creates a feeling in us. It's the interpretations
Mm.
that the brain gives. Notice I didn't say that we give,
Mm.
because I'm inviting everybody to get used to the idea that our brains are thinking automatically. Most of the time it's not a problem. But whenever we get a disturbing feeling, we want to say, okay, I better check and see if my fellow brain up here
Mm.
is operating objectively and factually or not. Okay, so I'd like to do a demonstration of that with my friend Sally the Snake.
Yes, let's do it.
Yeah. Cool.
You can cut it here.
Yeah.
So how's it